There are some evenings when everything outside has gone quiet, but inside your mind, an emergency meeting begins. An old sentence stands up and demands to be examined again. A passing glance suddenly turns into evidence. An unanswered message becomes dozens of possible stories. You lie there, exhausted, but your mind keeps arguing, predicting, blaming you, and preparing for things that may never happen. And the most painful part is that you know you are overthinking. You know it is not making you any more peaceful. But the harder you try to stop, the louder your mind becomes. Maybe the problem is not that you are weak. Maybe your brain has simply become too used to staying one step ahead of pain. But here is the dangerous part. The more you try to control your mind, the more you may be training it to stay trapped. And in this video, we are going to unpack why the brain creates this loop. Why the more you try to stop thinking, the more your thoughts seem to cling to you. And what is really happening underneath the habit of analyzing everything until you feel completely drained. More importantly, you will learn how to step out of overthinking without forcing yourself to become colder, more shallow, or less emotionally alive. The first thing to understand is this: the problem is not that you think deeply. Deep thinking can help you grow. It can help you notice layers of meaning that other people miss. It can help you understand yourself more clearly. A person who reflects is not weak. They have depth. They have awareness. They know how to look back and learn from what happened. But the problem begins when thinking no longer moves toward an answer. It only runs in circles. You ask yourself, why did I say that? Then that question turns into, did they think I was strange? And a few minutes later it becomes, I always mess everything up. At that point, you are no longer searching for the truth. You are being pulled into a cycle of self-condemnation. In psychology, this state is close to what we call rumination, a repeated form of mental chewing. It is when the mind keeps returning to the same question, the same memory, the same worst-case possibility, without actually creating a new solution. You feel as if you're analyzing the problem. But in reality, you are standing still inside it. And this is the first layer we need to uncover. An overthinking mind is usually not a weak mind. It is a mind that has become too familiar with searching for signs of danger everywhere. And when the brain has stayed on alert for too long, even a moment of silence can be mistaken for a threat. This is where the brain begins to operate like a forecast center for emotional storms. No storm has actually arrived yet, but inside you, the warning signals have already turned on. Someone replies to your message more slowly than usual. A conversation ends a little colder than it normally does. A silence appears between two people, and almost immediately, the amygdala, the part of the brain that processes signals of danger, begins to ask, is something wrong? Meanwhile, the prefrontal cortex, the part that helps you think logically and regulate your reactions, tries to step in and reassure you. Maybe they are just busy. Maybe this is not as serious as I think. But when the thinking loop has become too strong, logic is no longer truly in the driver's seat. It gets pulled into the investigation. It becomes like a lawyer hired by fear to search for evidence. Instead of calming you down, it starts digging through every small detail, every word, every silence, and turning them into reasons that make the fear seem more convincing. And here is the deeper layer. Your mind is not only replaying the past, it is trying to write the future in advance, so you will not be caught off guard by pain. Overthinking is dangerous, not because it is always irrational. It is dangerous because sometimes it looks like preparation. But a brain does not naturally learn to live this way for no reason. Not everyone who overthinks grew up in an unstable environment, but for many people, this habit did not begin with a sleepless night in adulthood. It began much earlier, in the years before you even had the language to name your own insecurity. Maybe you lived in an environment where the mood of the adults around you could shift very quickly. A door closing harder than usual was enough to make your body tense. A voice turning cold was enough to make you wonder what you had done wrong. one small mistake, one awkward answer, one expression at the wrong time. All of it could lead to criticism, silence, or a distance so cold you did not know what to do with it. Before you knew how to call it anxiety, your body already knew how to hold its breath. Before you understood what hypervigilance was, your mind had already learned how to read the room before entering it, how to prepare your words before being questioned, how to see the problem before it had a chance to happen. Back then, predicting things was not overthinking, it was how you protected yourself. But this is the most painful part. What once helped you survive in an unpredictable environment does not automatically disappear when you step into a safer life. And this is a very important point. That mechanism once had a reason to exist. It did not appear in order to destroy you. At one time, it helped you avoid painful moments, reduce the risk of being blamed, and hold on to some small sense of control in an unpredictable environment. Seen this way, overthinking did not begin as an enemy. It began as a guard at the door. It stood there, watching facial expressions, tones of voice, silences, and any sign that might warn you of an emotional storm ahead. When you were young, that alertness may have helped you get through some very difficult days. But as you grow older, the brain can continue using an old strategy in new situations. Someone replying slowly does not necessarily mean there is a threat. A conversation becoming a little quiet does not mean you are about to be abandoned. A tired expression is not always a sign that you have done something wrong, but the old nervous system still whispers, "Prepare yourself." And if you listen to that whisper for long enough, you may begin to confuse preparation with safety. That is when overthinking moves into a more dangerous trap. But not all forms of thinking too much are the same. There is a kind of thinking that helps you grow. We can call it reflection. It is what makes you pause after an argument and ask yourself, why did I react that way? What part of me was being touched? Next time, can I speak more clearly without hurting someone else? That kind of thinking may hurt a little, but it has direction. It does not crush you. It leads you toward understanding. After moving through it, you may still feel sad, but you can see yourself more clearly. The second kind is different. It is not reflection. It is rumination. It does not ask in order to learn. It asks in order to accuse. Why am I so stupid? Why do I always mess everything up? What if they hate me? And the more you ask, the smaller you become in your own eyes. The frightening thing is that these two states often begin with the same question. Why am I like this? But one path leads you toward healing, while the other pulls you into self-punishment. So the important question is not, am I thinking too much? The real question is, after I finish thinking, do I understand myself more, or do I hate myself more? And when this self-punishment lasts long enough, it often puts on a very convincing mask. You begin to believe you are controlling your life. And that is where the trap begins. Because when you are thinking, it always feels as if you are doing something useful. A busy mind can make you believe you are becoming more prepared, more protected, less vulnerable. You prepare 10 different responses in case someone becomes distant. You think you are getting ready for a conversation that might happen tomorrow, but in the end, that conversation has not happened at all, while your body has already lived through it as if it were a real battle. Sometimes you are not truly looking for an answer. You are trying to buy certainty from a world that can never be completely certain. You believe that if you analyze long enough, pain will not be able to surprise you. But thinking can become like an insurance policy that never pays out. You pay with your sleep, your peace, and your ability to be present, and still the fear remains. And that is why the advice, just stop thinking about it, almost never works. The first way out is not to force the thoughts to disappear. It is to learn how to stand just a little farther away from them. Because the more you try to push a thought out of your mind, the more it becomes like someone knocking at the door again and again. But when you step back and look at it, you begin to realize not every thought that appears needs to be believed, debated, or turned into the truth. When your mind says, "I am a failure," do not rush to believe it. Try changing that sentence into, "I am having the thought that I am a failure." It may sound small, but this distance is deeply important. Because when you say, "I am," you are fully stepping into the role that thought has given you. But when you say, "I am having the thought that," you begin to see it as something appearing in your mind, not as the final judgment of who you are. The thought may still be there. The fear may still speak. But it no longer gets to sit in the driver's seat. You do not need to defeat every thought. You only need to stop turning every thought into the truth about who you are. And if there are moments when the thoughts feel too loud for you to create distance with words, that is where the second way out begins. Bringing the body back into the present. So you do not need to become a more shallow person in order to feel at peace. You do not need to lose your sensitivity, your depth, or your ability to notice what other people miss. What you need is to learn how not to turn your mind into the only shelter you run to whenever fear appears. Understanding why you overthink will not make every thought disappear immediately, but it creates distance. And inside that distance, you begin to have a choice to keep chasing the old loop or to gently bring yourself back to the present. Maybe it is as simple as naming the thought, feeling your feet on the floor, slowing your breath, and reminding yourself, this is a thought, not a sentence. Peace does not begin when the mind becomes completely silent. It begins when you no longer have to believe every noise inside it. If you saw yourself in this video, leave a comment. Do you usually reflect in order to grow, or do you get pulled into self-blame? And if this video helped you feel even a little lighter, subscribe and share it with someone who may also be trapped inside their own mind. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next time.